She sued me for existing. Not for breaking her rules. I don't even live in her neighborhood. I live 2 blocks away on a county road. But apparently, she could see my house. And in her mind, that was enough. My name is Ray Calloway. I'm a one-man mobile mechanic. I wake up early, fix engines, pay my taxes, and mind my business. My house sits on Birchwood Lane, a county road that's been here since 1971. Long before the Crestview Commons HOA existed. Long before Sandra Pruitt decided a laminated badge and a highlighter made her god. I bought my place 7 years ago specifically because there was no HOA. No one telling me what color my shutters had to be or how many inches my grass could grow before they'd fine me like a parking meter. My garage is my office. My decaled van is my livelihood. I had exactly 0 complaints from anyone on my street. My actual neighbors liked me. I fixed Mrs. Garner's radiator for free when she got laid off. I helped the Delgado family replace a busted alternator the night before Thanksgiving. That was my life. Quiet. Honest. Mine. I had no idea that one woman's morning power walk was about to blow that piece wide open. And I had no idea that by the time it was over, she'd lose a whole lot more than just her lawsuit. Sandra Pruitt was the president of Crestview Commons HOA. She wore that title like a military rank. Every morning she walked the perimeter of her neighborhood with a clipboard, a phone camera, and an expression like she'd just smelled something offensive. Residents crossed the street when they saw her coming. People repainted fences the night before her inspection rounds. One family kept a spare set of curtains specifically for when Sandra walked by. I first noticed her about 6 weeks before everything exploded. She started slowing down near my property during her morning route. Taking photos. Scribbling notes. I didn't think much of it. I figured she'd realize I wasn't in her neighborhood and move on. I was wrong. One Tuesday she walked up my driveway while I was under a Jeep and said, loud and flat, "You're in violation." I rolled out, looked up at her from the concrete, and said, "Of what?" She thrust a laminated card at me. Crestview Commons Community Standards. Section 12. No commercial vehicles in residential zones. I stood up slowly, wiped my hands, and told her clearly. I don't live in Crestview Commons. She didn't blink. You're within visual range of our residence. That affects our community aesthetic. I stared at her for a long moment. That's not how property law works. She smiled like I'd said something adorable. You'll be hearing from us. What she didn't know was I'd already started recording. The moment she stepped onto my driveway, my front yard camera caught everything. Audio included. 3 weeks later, a thick envelope arrived, certified mail. Inside was a civil summons. Sandra Pruitt, president of Crestview Commons HOA, was suing me for operating an unauthorized commercial enterprise within visual proximity of a residential community, disrupting aesthetic standards, and diminishing property values. She attached blurry photos of my van, a map she had apparently drawn herself with a highlighter and a ruler, and a 4-page document citing HOA bylaws that had nothing to do with me or my property. I sat at my kitchen table and read the whole thing twice. Then I laughed. Then I called my neighbor Phil, who is a real estate attorney. "She's throwing mud," he said. "It's a pressure suit. She wants you to settle or disappear." I told him I planned to do neither. He told me to get my documents in order. So I did. But I didn't stop there. Because something about that fake hand-drawn map bothered me. If she was willing to fabricate a boundary, what else had she fabricated? I didn't just prepare a defense. I started digging. And what I found buried this woman deeper than anything I could have planned. I went to the county clerk's office on a Wednesday morning. I told the clerk I needed the original incorporation documents for Crestview Commons HOA. She typed for a moment, frowned, typed again, and said, "There's a filing from 2008, but it looks incomplete." I asked her what that meant. She turned the screen toward me. The HOA had filed articles of incorporation but never completed the required zoning certification with the county board. The final step, the one that made it legally binding, was never submitted. Never approved. Never finalized. Crestview Commons HOA had been operating for 16 years without legal standing. Every fine. Every enforcement action. Every bylaw violation letter. All of it, unenforceable. Built on nothing. Phil confirmed it that same evening. "Ray," he said quietly, "this is nuclear." I told him I knew. I filed a countersuit the next morning. The morning of the hearing, Sandra was already seated when I walked in. She had a color-coded binder, a stack of printed photos, and a man beside her in a grey blazer who kept glancing nervously at the door like he was thinking about using it. The judge entered, sat down, and gave Sandra the floor. She used every second of it. She talked about community standards, aesthetic harmony, property value protection. She pointed at photos of my van like it was evidence at a crime scene. She presented her hand-drawn map with the confidence of someone who had never once been told no. Then it was my turn. I stood up, handed the judge a single manila folder, and said, "Your Honor, I don't live in this woman's HOA. But more importantly, her HOA doesn't legally exist." The room went still. I laid it out clean. The 2008 filing. The missing zoning certification. The county clerk stamped records. The judge read in silence, then looked up over his glasses. "I'll need to verify this with the county clerk directly. We'll reconvene in 72 hours. Sandra's pen stopped moving. The man in the grey blazer leaned over and whispered something. She shook her head once, sharp, like she was refusing to believe it. 72 hours later I walked back into that courtroom in my work boots. The judge sat down, opened his folder, and looked directly at Sandra. "Mrs. Pruitt, I contacted the county zoning office and reviewed their records. Crestview Commons HOA was never properly incorporated under county law. Its charter is invalid. All enforcement actions taken under its name have no legal standing, including this lawsuit." Sandra opened her mouth. "That can't be right. We've been operating for 16 years. The judge didn't soften. "Under an authority you never legally possessed." He turned to me. "Mr. Calloway, your countersuit for harassment, misrepresentation of jurisdiction, and defamation is supported by the evidence submitted. I'm ruling in your favor. $4,000 in damages plus full reimbursement of legal costs." Sandra gasped. "He's a mechanic." The judge brought the gavel down. "And you abused a power you never had." The man in the grey blazer stood up, muttered something about a phone call, and walked straight out. Sandra followed, heels loud against the floor. But it didn't end there. It got much worse for her. The county launched a formal audit within 2 weeks. What they found wasn't just sloppy bookkeeping. It was a 16-year scheme. Over $90,000 in dues collected under false legal authority. Fake vendor invoices. Phantom maintenance projects. Personal expenses run through HOA accounts. Spa receipts. Restaurant tabs. Boutique clothing. A county investigator told me Sandra had been treating the HOA treasury like a personal expense account since nearly the beginning. State and federal agencies got involved when they traced misreported income across county lines. 3 months after that first court date, Sandra Pruitt was on the evening news being walked out of her condo in handcuffs. Hair undone. Lips pressed tight. Flanked by 2 federal agents. She was charged with wire fraud, tax evasion, falsifying financial records, and conspiracy. She pled not guilty. Her attorney started looking for a plea deal the moment prosecutors pulled her emails. She eventually accepted 10 years in federal prison and a lifetime ban from any fiduciary role in any HOA, civic council, or non-profit. Every fine Crestview Commons had ever issued was declared void. Residents received certified letters from the county confirming they owed nothing. The HOA that was never real was officially dissolved. And the neighborhood began to breathe again. Fences got repainted in colors people actually liked. Gardens came back. A community garden went up where the old enforcement notice board used to stand. Families started talking to each other instead of reporting each other. One morning I was talking lug nuts on a client's truck when a woman I didn't recognize walked up, handed me a card, and said, "Thank you for not folding." I nodded and went back to work. Here's what I've learned from all of it. Power that isn't earned doesn't last. It just delays the collapse. Sandra built 16 years of control on a foundation that was always one document away from disappearing. All it took was one person willing to walk to the county clerk's office and ask a single question. She mistook silence for agreement. She mistook fear for loyalty. And she mistook her clipboard for a crown. The moment someone stopped being afraid, it was over. If this story hit different, you already know what to do. And if you want to see what happens when the next HOA grifter tries to rise from the ashes, that story is coming. Stay close.